Welcome to the rhythm video in the Aspiring Flutists Epic Inspiration course. Many videos in this course are flute specific, but this video is one that could benefit any musician. I'll be demonstrating things on my flute, of course, but you could try any of the exercises in this video on any instrument. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and share with you 3 of my big goals when we talk about rhythmic resonance, my goals for you. Number 1, total rhythm confidence. No more guessing, stressing, or B.S.ing. Number 2, a dramatically improved relationship with the metronome. Number 3, an understanding that rhythm is the heart of the music and the top priority as you practice. Believe it or not, more than tone, even more than breathing, if you can believe it. Rhythm is the top priority. After the musical intro, I'd like to kick things off by sharing a couple of quick stories about my very interesting rhythm journey. So, you know how when you're a music student, sometimes you have these big aha moments, these epiphanies. Well, there are 2 major epiphanies I had as a music student. I was about to say young, but honestly, I was already in my 20s. The first, I was in my undergraduate studies playing Hindemith Symphony in B flat, and right in the middle of the rehearsal, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted to stand up and just shout at everyone this news that I had realized. I wanted to say, guys, do you know that subdividing is like an all the time thing? Not just when it's a super hard rhythm, not just when you've made a mistake and you need to fix a rhythm, but no, it's an all the time thing. We'll talk about that later in this video, and don't worry, it's more fun than it sounds. My second huge epiphany also almost knocked me over. I had already finished my first degree in flute performance and was teaching a lot of private students each week. And every single day I was helping them with their rhythm. I can't tell you how many times I was saying my fun rhythm words. Pie, jello, huckleberry pie. And I was doing this type of exercise with a student one afternoon. It was like my 30th lesson of the week. And we finished the rhythm that we were practicing. And I felt this feeling, this continuing beat. I was shocked. Remember, I already had a degree in music. But I realized, wow. That's what inner pulse feels like. Now, I would have thought I had a good sense of rhythm. You would have thought that after years in marching band, hearing those loud metronomes, those loud drums and marching to the beat, you would think I would have had a good sense of internal pulse, but it was all coming from external sources, and I had not really realized what it was like to feel it coming from the inside. We're going to talk more about this too throughout the video, how to cultivate a sense of inner pulse, one that you can trust. Chances are, if you're watching this video, either you or your students don't have total confidence with rhythm yet. The very first thing, the first step to building rhythm confidence is knowing your rhythm math. I've linked below this video in the description box a free PDF called The Ultimate Rhythm Guide, and in it I've included all the basic rhythm math. Now, for you to have rhythm confidence as a musician, you need to have instant recall, lightning fast connection with how rhythm math works. It's not enough to sit there and think for a moment, okay, how many 30-second notes fit into an eighth note? No, You need to know instantly 4 30-second notes fit into an eighth note. Also, when it comes to dotted notes or triplets, you need to understand how the math works right off the top of your head without any delay. So for instance, dotted notes, you can always divide them into 3 of the next smallest rhythm. What can you divide a dotted quarter note into? 3 eighth notes. What can you divide a dotted 16th note into? 3 30-second notes. You need to have instant recognition of rhythms and rests so that you can have your energy free, not only to keep connecting with the rhythm effortlessly, but also free to care about your flute or your instrument, your breathing, your tone. You cannot busy brain rhythms at all if you want to develop rhythmic confidence. Now, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're not going to go from 0 to 100% confidence in one day or one practice session. But if you prioritize rhythm every single time you practice, you will make improvements each time you interact with a new rhythm. And quicker than you might think, your confidence will grow. Micro steps have ripple effects, and the way you mark your music is no exception. I like to take the time to mark my downbeats with numbers. Now, I don't do this in every measure of every piece, but I do it a lot. Anytime there's a tricky rhythm, a complex rhythm, a meter change, or perhaps just a musical moment where I need to rein in my focus. If I'm practicing and I make a silly mistake, my response is often to mark my downbeats with numbers. It is amazing how much that reins in my focus the next time I practice it. Now, I've interacted with a lot of musicians that mark a lot of downbeats with hash marks or vertical lines. I have actually never met a music student that uses this method that also has good rhythm. Now, if you're a professional musician or super advanced and already feel really comfortable with rhythm and you like this method, of course, feel free to do what works for you. But like I said, I've noticed that music students that just have hash marks all over their page often have inconsistent, awkward, or just plain incorrect rhythm. My theory is that the way the hash marks look are very busy brain inducing, and everything just looks the same. When you mark your downbeats with numbers, you have a sense of clarity about the meter, and the information just pops a little bit better. While we're on the subject of the ripple effects of marking your music, I'd also like to advocate that when you mark your downbeats, you mark them very clearly, not with little tiny numbers, but clearly visible numbers exactly in the spot visually where the downbeat lies. If your numbers are messy or too tiny or a little bit random, that again is just going to contribute to a sense of busy brain. I cannot recommend strongly enough, anytime you want clarity and confidence, mark your downbeats with numbers. Perfectionist trap alert. So often the music students that want to do the best with rhythm are actually doing the worst because they're operating under a flawed premise. They are thinking that rhythm is an intellectual activity when in reality, it's a feeling. Once I had this college student approach me and say, "Dr. Sanchez, I don't like your fun words for rhythms." And I told him it was okay, but just to fill you in, I do love fun words for practicing and teaching. Pie for quarter notes, jello for eighth notes, strawberry for triplets, huckleberry for sixteenths, opportunity for quintuplets, strawberry for sextuplets, superficiality or autobiographical for septuplets, for a group of 8 30-second notes, huckleberry for a group of 9, a non-uplet, strawberry for a decuplet, 10, opportunity, and for a group of 11, an undecuplet, anatomical physiological. I love fun words, but I told him that this was okay because he could use a counting system, 1 and a 2 and a 1 t-teta, 2 t-teta. It didn't really matter as long as it worked for him. But then he said, "Dr. Sanchez, I don't like the counting systems either." Now, I told him in his case specifically, that was also okay because this student had an excellent sense of rhythmic proportion and demonstrated that anytime he performed on his flute. But I did explain to him that he needed to at least understand the counting systems because conductors use them to refer to examples for musicians in their ensemble. And also, if the student was ever going to be a teacher, he needed to know how to explain the counting systems. But since he had excellent rhythm, an excellent sense of rhythmic proportion, his rhythmic integrity to me was more important than the labels of the counting systems. And this is why I tell you this story. One ianda, two ianda is just a representation of two groups of 16th notes. I like Huckleberry, Huckleberry because it gets us a little closer to the feeling, but the labels are just labels no matter how you slice it. The real rhythm is I often use the term caveman kindergarten because my students who are trying to be so brainy with their rhythms are often just off. Their rhythms don't even make any sense. So if you have been a previously way too brainy perfectionist, intellectualizer with your rhythms, I implore you, use the rule, if I can say it, I can play it. For instance, pie, jello, huckleberry pie, or 1, 2, and 3, and a 4. You just use the labels to access the feeling, but the real rhythm is actually... In the introductory video to this course, I talked to you about one of my favorite words, sfumato, which has to do with the tension of opposites, the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time. Let's look at the tension of opposites in this video so far. On the one hand, I told you rhythm is not an intellectual activity, it's a feeling. On the other hand, I said the very first and essential step to building rhythmic confidence is to know your rhythm math. And that very much is an intellectual activity. I would like to show you how both things are true. When you learn your rhythm math, it is essential that you program it in, that you use your intellect, yes, to initially understand the information, but then you need to practice enough. You could use flashcards with rhythm math equations or studying etudes, exercises, however you study your rhythm math. You want to switch from intellectualization to internalization. If it's not instant recall, if it's not a feeling that you have access to, that's going to be busy brain inducing. So yes, you initially begin with your intellect, but the entire process of building confidence with your rhythm, of actually cultivating what I call rhythmic resonance, it's all about internalization, programming it into your body. It's actually muscle memory, that feeling of internal pulse. Now, if you feel a bit intimidated thinking of your own sense of internal pulse, I would like to tell you about a little example that may make you feel better. Once I had a student that was being so brainy with her rhythms and just thinking herself sick almost, trying to do a good job. But I decided enough was enough. We spent an entire lesson, as a college student, an entire 1-hour lesson listening to Miley Cyrus and practicing tapping the beat. Now, if you think of yourself driving down the road, listening to your favorite music, you are feeling that beat. You have access to the downbeats. Of course you do. It's why crowds start tapping their toes or kind of clapping dorkily on 1 and 3 or on off beats, because we all feel drawn to steady rhythm. The problem with musicians that don't feel that they have access to that sense of internal pulse, it's because they're blocking the caveman kindergarten basic primal access to just uh, 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 uh. It's so simple, it's difficult. When you are thinking of a bunch of math equations for the rhythm, or a bunch of shoulds and shouldn'ts, or feeling bad about your rhythm, or trying to prove that you have good rhythm, can you hear the busy brain in that? That is what gets in the way of just uh, 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 uh. I want you to do the same rhythm experiment. Grab some pop tunes and practice just feeling the beat, trusting the beat. And little by little, as you practice, try to integrate that kind of feeling-based simplicity with the way you approach rhythms as a musician. You've heard me use the term busy brain many times in this video so far, and the etude on your screen right now is the beginning of the busy brain etude that I included in my Sing-Along Surrender etude book almost as a joke. It's definitely unnecessarily complicated. But I do know that many music students look at complex music like this as if it was some kind of overly complicated calculus problem, and can go into panic or busy brain type approaches just trying to survive the rhythms. I want to assure you that rhythm is kindergarten, not calculus. But you do have to break it down and spend some time with the rhythms, making sure you have access to the feeling of them and creating a pathway for you to practice with that simple access to rhythm. Otherwise, it really does seem like busy brain is the answer. And I assure you, it's not. So let's look at this busy brain etude. If you just dive in blindly, hopefully with your metronome on, but if you dive in without any sense of rhythmic proportion, this can just seem like chaos. And please allow me to describe a pet peeve for a moment. I think it's tragic when music students unfortunately originally learned rhythm with thoughts like, oh, these rhythms are faster, or these rhythms are slower. Can you hear how that's just based on randomness and guessing? Ooh, no guessing, stressing, or B.S.ing with rhythms, please. If I catch that one of my students has that kind of lack of rhythmic foundation, we will definitely spend quality time doing clapping exercises, counting exercises to establish a rhythmic foundation that they can then use to move forward. Let's look briefly at this busy brain etude and talk about how to simplify things, solidify your sense of rhythmic access as you practice it. First thing I would do is practice each rhythm plus a downbeat individually. So for the first beat, I would say opportunity 2. You could do this with the metronome. For the second beat, I would say huckleberry, huckleberry 3, opportunity 4, jello 1. You can do incremental steps and then put it together. Opportunity, huckleberry, huckleberry, opportunity, jello 1. You can take as much time as you need. In fact, I encourage you to take more time than you think, but internalize the feeling. As you practice, try to match the feeling of the fun words with the exact way that you feel when you play. I can't tell you how often a student will do a great job counting something out loud, but then when they bring their flute into the mix, everything gets overly complicated again. Watch the simplicity as I transfer my fun word practice to my flute playing. Opportunity 2, huckleberry, huckleberry 3. Opportunity 4, jello 1. patience too. When I put it together, those rhythms feel good after I've taken the time to break it down and access the rhythmic feeling. Actually ends up being quite fun to practice this way. I encourage you to use fun words shamelessly. Take it back to kindergarten, and always remember, rhythm is kindergarten, not calculus. That was me practicing expressive subdividing. Now, when I was a young music student, I thought subdivisions were kind of boring. Like, I could have counted it 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and but that type of robotic subdivision wasn't helping me as a musician. It wasn't easily integrated into expressive flute playing. I encourage you to practice expressive subdivisions, playing with all the good stuff as you subdivide so that you can internalize your rhythms. Yes, you can learn how long the long notes are. You can learn about rhythmic proportion as you practice them, but also at the same time, you can practice your phrasing, the rise and fall of your melodic lines. You can even practice the timing of your breaths. If you watched the video on breathing, video number 6 in this course, you learned about rhythmic breaths. And if you were paying close attention, you'll notice that in the 4th full measure here, I only played 5 eighth notes in the dotted half note F because I replaced the 6th eighth note with my rhythmic breath. Expressive subdivisions are where it's at. As flutists, expressive subdivisions can even help guide our air, our vibrato, our crescendos and decrescendos, our accelerandos and rallentandos. Subdivisions are the magical grid underneath all of the rhythms in the music that we're playing. Please practice with expressive subdivisions as a normal part of your repertoire preparation. Slow is fast and fast is slow. Controlling is chaos. Instead, go with the flow. This is a favorite little poem of mine for practicing and for teaching music, and it applies in so many ways. I also think it's important to keep this in mind as we're thickening that myelin sheath, making the connections in our mind much faster through repetition. Slow is fast and fast is slow. One example is if you're playing music with a lot of duples, like eighth notes and 16th notes. Even if you come across a triplet right in the middle of eighth notes, that triplet is going to feel strangely slow, strangely stretchy if played well. Our perception of time is a very interesting thing. Even though rhythm is kindergarten, not calculus, our perception of time and our handling of time in a mature artistic way is a lifelong journey. Another way that slow is fast, and another way that our perception of time is so interesting, is when we're playing fast tempos or complex rhythms. There's actually so much time in the space of 1 second. 1 60 beats per minute beat can have so much detail in it. I like to utilize something I call the matrix trick. And we're going to talk about this again when it comes to practicing technique and gaining muscle memory. But the matrix trick, I'll go ahead and tell you for now, it's a way to access this idea that there's so much time within a small space of time. So if you're playing a moment in your music that's in the context of a fast tempo or a complex rhythm, I call it the matrix trick because I'm thinking of the movie The Matrix, when Neo has kind of mastered mind over matter. He's seen the matrix, he's up on the building, the bad guy shoots at him, he slows down time with his mind, and the bullet just barely misses him. I feel like we musicians, we need to be able to do this at a moment's notice. The way you activate the matrix trick is to care so much about hearing every individual note that you see that you'd be willing to play too slowly if necessary. Spoiler alert, when I coach my students on the matrix trick and they really get the idea, they feel like they're playing in slow-mo, but then weirdly out here in objective reality, they never changed tempos at all. This is one of the countless reasons why practicing with the metronome is so essential. We're going to talk more about the metronome next. I hope a huge majority of the repetitions you accumulate in your practice involve the metronome accompanying you. Now, I say accompanying you because there is an art to feeling the beat inside yourself and having the metronome validate the steadiness of that beat. That is enough food for thought to keep you busy for weeks of metronome practice. I hope you'll reflect on it. Also, I hope that a huge majority of your repetitions involve the metronome because of what we just talked about. Our perception of time is notoriously inaccurate. Think about this. If you are on vacation and engaging in a fun activity, feeling relaxed, having fun, time flies. If, however, you're in a class that you are not enjoying, it seems to take forever. The theory of relativity, you know? As musicians, some things feel faster than they are. Some things seem slower than they are. And the metronome brings in that sense of objective reality. What is mathematically steady? Now, as you practice, you're going to need to be radically flexible and start to notice, okay, in order to stay with a steady beat here, I have to really feel a lot of energy, very proactive. On the other hand, in order to stay steady here, I really have to calm myself down. I'd like to address one other aspect of metronome practice. We're going to get into some specific metronome techniques in the video on technique and muscle memory. But one other aspect that I think is so important to consider is how you feel about the metronome. So many music students have either a love-hate relationship with it, or just a hate relationship, or a codependent relationship with it. Let's talk briefly about how to make your relationship with the metronome a bit healthier, hopefully a lot healthier. Love your metronome. Turn the thing on first moment of your practice session and use it during your warm-ups. Feel like it's your friend. Like I said, it accompanies you. It validates you. You can also use creative metronome beats. You don't have to use your same old metronome app. You can hop onto YouTube and get a drum beat, Spotify, use some pop tunes. There's so many options for how to have a steady beat involved in your practice. If it's love-hate, or you find yourself saying the very tragic phrase, "the metronome messed me up," you're in some kind of busy brain toxicity that you probably need to ditch and have a new perspective ready to go for your next practice session. For a healthier approach, enjoy the validation of the steady beat, the reminder of the steady beat, the help with feeling the steady beat. And then, so that it's not codependent and you don't feel like you have to have the metronome on, otherwise you don't have a good sense of rhythm, make some bridge steps for yourself. You can switch from metronome for foundational practice to expressive subdivisions so that you can have even more of a sense of ownership and flexibility. Remember, expressive subdivisions can guide speed ups and slow downs, rises and falls. Metronome, expressive subdivision, then go to playing the music as written without the metronome, but record yourself, listen back, tap along, try to say fun words along with what you've played. Be so humble, so open, so flexible. Understand the complexity of our sense of timing as humans. Last thing about this healthy relationship with the metronome, I'm going to link a video down below that I just love. It's from the movie Another Earth, where this woman is describing a story about a Russian cosmonaut who's trapped up in space with this horrible ticking sound. And this sound is going to drive him nuts. He's stuck up in space not knowing how to fix it, and it's just incessant. He knows he's going to lose his mind if he doesn't change his perception. So he goes into his imagination and begins to imagine music. She tells the story so poignantly. It's a really beautiful clip. I hope you'll take the time to watch it. But in summary, practice with your metronome. Love your metronome. Have a great attitude about your metronome. Then utilize bridge steps, expressive subdivisions to help yourself feel independent from the metronome. If you have any questions about my metronome philosophy, if you want to ask something specific, please feel free to do so in the comments below. I hope this video on rhythmic resonance has helped you to collect some clues and feel closer to a sense of rhythmic integrity and a much higher level of comfort with rhythm in general. You may just be starting on your journey toward rhythmic resonance, or these may have been some good reminders to dig a little deeper or climb a little higher. I want to explain why I call it rhythmic resonance. Even though resonance is typically associated with sound, it also means something that has special importance to you. I want you to strive for rhythmic resonance, which means so much more than just intellectually understanding rhythm math or even having basic internalization of the rhythms. It's more like rhythm that you feel in your bones, a groove that makes you feel alive. If you are resonating with the rhythms in your music, your audience will. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll check out the other videos in the Aspiring Flutists Epic Inspiration course. You can also find my books and other online courses at Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company, www.fluteforyou.com. I've got some free resources for you at my website, practicejunkie.com, and I also hope you'll head over to miyazawa.com to check out the gorgeous selection of Miyazawa flutes. Finally, if you or a wonderful flutist you know might be interested in studying with me at the UMKC Conservatory in Kansas City, I hope you'll email me at t.sanchez@umkc.edu.